There are 99 days left until Election Day, and both parties have some problems to work out. Democrats in Illinois are looking to lessen the impact of an ethics scandal at the State House, and Republicans in Washington are trying to convince voters to keep them in power after the midterms. Let's get to the point.
From Chicago's very own, with WGN political editor Taman Bradley, this is The Point.
And good evening to you. I'm Ben Bradley. Taman is off. The Illinois State House is bracing for the release of a report detailing alleged misconduct by disgraced former state representative Harry Benton of Plainfield. But what happens next depends a lot on the lopsided distribution of power across state government. Democrats hold every statewide office and supermajorities in both legislative chambers. That leaves little room for Republicans to raise the issue on the House floor or on the campaign trail. At least one Democratic state rep is calling for more ethics reform to ensure future reports are always made public. But party leaders have mostly said the current system worked exactly how it was supposed to. Tribune reporter Rick Pearson, along with his colleague Jeremy Gorner, broke many of the stories about the sexual harassment scandal, and Rick joins us now. Thanks for being with us. Let's start with the alleged victim. She spoke with you guys at the Tribune. What did she say happened to her, and how was it handled or not handled by Speaker Welch's office?
Well, actually, we spoke to two alleged victims. One that this occurred back in 2023. 3 years ago. She started work as an employee in Harry Benton's district office and basically told us that she faced harassment from the start of her job. She worked there 6 months. In April, during her employment, she confided to someone who suggested she contact the Speaker's office and gave the Speaker's office a lengthy list of statements that Benton had made, harassing statements, many of them of a sexual nature, and she sent that to the Speaker's office. The Speaker's office waited until July, 3 months later, before they even confronted Benton. In the meantime, the staffer left her job. She said she wanted to have it handled internally, so she rejected calls to send it to the Inspector General. She wanted the Speaker's office to handle it internally. Nothing was done. Speaker goes on to spend $1.4 million in the next year for Benton's reelection. And that brings us to the present situation where a female lobbyist earlier this year ran into Benton at a bar, and he showed her some lewd pictures on his phone and also made lewd comments towards her. And that prompted a legislative inspector general report, which we're all awaiting right now.
And that could be released later this week. The state GOP did manage to take a swipe on social media at Speaker Welch. Let's take a look at that.
Has been spreading the love on Instagram. Just see for yourself. He likes photos like this, and this, and this, and this. And let's not forget some of the emojis he loves to use.
That social media post targeting Speaker Welch's social media usage. So I guess my question is, does the GOP, is it relevant enough in the state of Illinois to be able to actually force the conversation that probably should be had?
There should be a conversation. There definitely should be. The question is, what can the Republican Party do? I mean, this party has been so close to bordering on irrelevancy. They're such super minorities in the General Assembly that they're almost non-factors here. That, if we had a better balance, political balance, where checks and balances really do work, I think they would have more of an impact in trying to raise these ethics concerns as an issue. But I'm even being told by some consultants that even some of the current sitting Republicans don't really want to make a big deal out of this because they're afraid that they may become targets in the future election of Speaker Welch and the Democrats' overwhelming cash advantage in legislative elections.
But it's been interesting. We reported last week that Republican candidate for Governor Darren Bailey hasn't had a press conference in the Chicago area in more than a month. Have you been surprised that he's not out banging the drum a bit more?
I have been, especially with kind of his vow that this was going to be the Darren Bailey 2.0, and I've learned from my mistakes in the past and how much I need to have support in the Chicagoland area where most of the voters in the state are, and apologizing for calling Chicago a hellhole. Yeah, I thought he would make a much greater visual presence or effort to make one as far as free media, because the fact of the matter is, unlike when he ran and lost 4 years ago, he had millions of dollars, millions multiple. He doesn't have that kind of cash.
So how is he spending his time? Because we don't see a lot of him. I mean, we see some posts on social media, but it is fascinating to me that you have, the Republican candidate for governor. You'd think he would be out every Monday morning, wherever an awful crime took place in Chicago, saying, hey, this is why we need to repeal the Safety Act, or this is why, we need to lock up criminals more severely. But he's not.
No, I mean, it's largely doing kind of a Facebook campaign, which, posting on Facebook, the events that he does have listed, and then kind of follows up with them on social media. They're not large group gatherings of any kind. I mean, the campaign promises that as we move into closer to the true election season, that he will be spending more time in the Chicago area. But truly, he's been back downstate, which has already demonstrated its support for him by him winning the primary. But he's been spending time downstate, which I'm not sure what the value add is to that.
It's interesting to note, though, because, while a federal indictment brought down the former all-powerful House Speaker Mike Madigan, there was another scandal involving how his office handled sexual harassment claims that actually put a dent in Madigan's armor. Do you think this Harry Benton scandal has the potential to damage Speaker Welch in the same way?
I think it could have the potential, but also, Democratic members themselves, too, they rely on the speaker's ability to raise cash and to give them campaign cash. I mean, that's one of the things that helped keep Madigan in power so long, was his ability to basically fund all of these Democratic candidates in return for their support and loyalty for Speaker.
What are you hearing from House Democrats about the conversations happening behind closed doors? Is Speaker Welch in trouble with his own members, or do you think this all kind of blows over?
Well, I think there's a certain number of members, certainly more in the progressive women, who aren't happy with how this came about, and frankly may never have come about if we hadn't written the story that about the staffer and 3 years ago, and knowing this was going on and not doing anything about it. I mean, there's still plenty of unanswered questions, and we'll see if that report gets to any of those. But to this day, we don't even know if after that 2023 incident, a list of allegations, we don't know if the speaker even talked to Harry Benton about it.
And we wouldn't know anything about this if it weren't for the reporting of you and your colleagues at the Tribune. So, Rick Pearson, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ben.
And we're back in 60 seconds. President Trump issuing a warning of sorts to his own party today. He wants the Senate to stay in session until they pass his voting bill that would require photo ID and limit mail-in ballots. Rashad Hudson has the story for us from Washington.
It's President Trump versus Senate Majority Leader John Thune.
Just got to get his job done.
Despite the public pressure to pass President Trump's election overhaul bill, the president says he has a good relationship with Thune. The Senate is slated to leave town soon for their August break, but President Trump says not so fast.
The SAVE Act has to be done. They shouldn't leave town. I'm not going to stop them from doing it.
The SAVE Act the president is pushing for would require a government-issued ID to vote and proof of citizenship to register to vote. In a post online, he's also renewing his calls to eliminate the filibuster. That's a Senate tool that requires 60 votes to pass a bill.
If you don't terminate the filibuster, only bad things will happen.
Political experts say the president may be powerful when it comes to getting members of his own party to lose their seats, but there's still one area that's a challenge.
he hasn't had as much power when it comes to trying to strong-arm the Congress into changing its rules.
George Washington University political science professor Todd Belt says it's rare for lawmakers to work through their August recess, especially during an election year.
Donald Trump has to make the case to the American people that Congress is not getting the job done.
The last time that happened was in 2018. Rashad Hudson, News Nation, Washington.
And finally, a tip of the hat to the Energizer Bunny of political candidates, Jim Oberweis. That's a kind description compared to how he's being portrayed in a new ad in Florida, where Oberweis is running in a crowded Republican primary for Congress to represent the area around Naples and Fort Myers.
Liberal Jim Oberweis ran 9 times for office in Illinois.
Congress Senator.
As Governor.
State Senator Jim Oberweis.
Supporting amnesty and even citizenship for illegal immigrants. Career candidate, perennial loser.
I'm Jim Oberweis.
Don't let him Illinois our Florida.
Oberweis isn't the only failed Illinois candidate seeking election redemption in that Florida congressional district. Catalina Loff, who ran twice for Congress in Chicago's suburbs, is another one of the 10 candidates competing in that Republican primary. We'll see if these Illinois expats can gain ground. It's an open seat. The election in Florida is August 18th. And that is The Point. Thanks for watching. Lourdes is back with more news for you tonight at 9 o'clock. First, you can catch up on the forecasters. That's on the WGN Plus app.